Hello and welcome back to the Black Death. Today I thought I'd share with you a few tips and tricks for new players that I have discovered whilst myself exploring the world of Mercia. So first of all, when you join a new server, you can just use the general chat at the bottom left to go ahead and ask around whether there's anybody who's willing to either, even out of charity, give you a bit of a starter kit, or is willing to trade some things. Especially important, maybe a backpack or a weapon. And sometimes higher tier players are looking for clay or something like that, which is relatively easy for you to gather, but maybe a little bit time intensive, and so people may be willing to give you a bit of gear for instance, clay or stones, which just takes them too long to gather, but they need for making advanced walls. Second is how to level up in this game, or multiple ways, but the fastest way is by killing NPCs. Especially monks are very good for leveling up. And monks can found in many places, but I found that I can find a lot of them, especially here in the eastern parts, so past Queen's Crossing. And the thing is, monk fanatics, sometimes you can also find them a little bit beforehand. Monk fanatics give you about 100 XP, which is quite a bit, and they're not that hard to kill if you just go to them, go back, go to them, hit them, and then go back. And crossbow monks, which I find a little bit harder because they tend to run away a lot, give even more, 180 XP, which is nearly one whole skill point. And down here in the southeast, you can even find templars, which give even more experience. As far as I know, 220 XP. However, in my opinion, it's not really worth it because they're quite hard to kill. They're quite tough because they have armor, and they also do quite a lot of damage, so it's not really the risk and reward in that situation isn't really the best, unless of course you're trying to get a little bit of money, because they do tend to drop swords and like, so you do get a little bit of money from selling those things. Additionally, while talking about XP, number 3, the more unspent skill points you accumulate, the more experience points are so more XP is needed for another skill point. This is important in the sense that you don't really want to gather up many skill points, rather spend them as fast as possible. Also, that means that leveling a skill which requires 2 skill points instead of 1 doesn't require double as much XP, but more than double as much as XP to unlock. Tip number 4 would be for me to put some skill points early into strength. So that would be, in this case, right here for the attributes, because it, as you can see, increases damaging, which isn't that good, but more important is it increases your carry capacity or carry weight by about 5 per skill point, which is, in my opinion, quite useful when gathering resources. So put a few points in that early, since it always only requires 1 point. Talking about attributes, point number 5, most other attributes, so for instance health, stamina, agility, hunger, thirst, crafting and all that, they're not really quite worth it yet. Also, some of them aren't really properly implemented yet, and so it's really not wise to spend points early in those areas, more in the late game. Additionally, especially whilst resource gathering, it's important to think about that the best armor is not always the best armor to take. So if you're just gathering out to gather resources, a chest piece may already be enough, or a heavy gambeson, or just light armor, as it is enough to protect you in your resource gathering, and it doesn't have a lot of weight, so you can carry more resources. For instance, I in my case just have a chest piece on right now, which gives me 10 armor value, but in itself isn't all that heavy. If I take it off, it's got 28, but if I had the whole set on, I'd basically have most of my carry weight already taken up by that armor. If you want to look at how much armor value your pieces give, you can just take it off and then put it back on, and then here, just under your name, you can see how much armor value it gives you. And so you might want to go through a few different pieces of armor and just seeing how much armor it gives versus how heavy it is. In my opinion, as I said, the heavy gambeson gives you quite a good amount of armor for the weight it has. Sometimes when you take it off, it also has in its portrait a little number indicating how much armor it has. Going on to point 7, bigger is not always better. So you might not always want to take the two-handed sword or the most expensive sword. For instance, a bad example of this is that I have a relic with me to fight. However, though the relic has better damage than, for instance, just a simple sword, it is very, very expensive to repair, and so that might not be worth it for me. So I might rather instead just take a simple sword, which may do, well, a little bit less damage, maybe half the damage or something like that on every strike, but costs about a fifth, if not even less, to repair. So you might always want to think about that if you're just, for instance, fighting against NPCs. If, of course, you're fighting against other players, you might want to take your better weapon, as you don't want to die against them and you need an advantage. Whilst talking about PvP, it is always important to, when going near other players or when deciding to fight other players, don't necessarily take your best kit. Take the kit that you are willing to lose, because it may just happen that you die against somebody else and then that your stuff is gone. So only always take what you are willing to lose. On the topic of weapons, you may want to try out different types of weapons. There are swords, there are double-handed swords, there are daggers, there are, as far as I know, spears. So a whole range of different weapons, and there's even a warhammer, and they all have different types of attacks. And so you may want to look at each of those different weapons and see which suits your style. Additionally, also, I find that, for instance, the dagger has a very strong right-click attack, and so really have a go at them and just see which weapon suits you best and which you find to be good. As we've also talked about the problem of expensive gear and repairing that expensive gear, I have found that the best way to make money, at least in, let's say, more of the middle game, is making iron mauls. Later on you can make better things. For instance, you have the royal armor, which goes for, I mean, if I take mine off, it goes for about 5,000 gold, which is quite a lot. But really, you do need to have a lot of levels to get that. However, taking a look at the iron maul, this requires a lot less hard to come by resources, and it also only requires, as far as I know, smithing level 6, so it is available to you quite early. And the iron maul itself sells for about 3,000 gold, so it's not much less, and the components aren't particularly expensive to get either. So if you can't find them in the wild, then you can also, for instance, buy the iron ingots from the blacksmith. You can often find wooden planks from building merchants, and then leather or hide can often be gotten from a tailor or a hunter, and the iron nails also can be gotten from the builder merchant. And the interesting thing here is even if you buy everything, you probably pay about 1,000 gold, but you'll get back about 3,000 gold, which more or less triples your investment. And then later on, if you may want to get more of those iron molds and produce quite a lot of them to get a lot of money, I found that usually the thing which is, well, the stopgap, the weak link in the chain, is the leather. And so for later in the game, the easiest way that I have found to get animal pelts is not by actually hunting animals, but by actually getting the wood trap in the hunter skill tree, as you can place them literally anywhere, and it will always give you one animal pelt. So it only requires 2 wood, always gives you 1 pelt, and is just a lot quicker than hunting animals or trying to get it from hunters or other places. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you've learned something today. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them in the comments. I'll answer them as best as I can.